Hi, it's Bill. You may know that I get into different methods of navigation and I enjoy learning new ways of doing things. Around here, we have the opportunity to get into some really wild and remote locations, so taking full advantage of all the means of navigation available is important. Lately, I've been combining GPS with Topo map and compass to make sure I get where I want to go and know where I am along the way. Among other things, that means brushing up on the UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator Grid System. For this kind of navigation, we want a GPS, a topo map, a compass, and the appropriate plotting tool, also known as a coordinate scale or ruler. This matched to your map because different maps have different scales. You're also going to want a compass rose or plotter to help you determine bearings on your map. Now, I had some experience with this system in the military. But as far as civilian maps go, most of mine used latitude and longitude with an occasional blue tick mark for UTM, and that's pretty much useless unless you draw your own grid lines, which I recently did on one of my old maps. That's something I'd wanted to try for a while, and it was a learning experience, and I made a few mistakes, and I corrected them-ish. Next time, I would use a mechanical pencil with the thin, hard leads rather than soft colored pencils that dull after every line. On a 1 in 50,000 scale map, some of those lines are over 75 meters wide. But interestingly, when I plotted positions on it and compared them to plots from another map, I wasn't too far off. It would probably work in an emergency. Heck, it might even cause the emergency, and who can pass up that kind of adventure? Fortunately, we don't have to draw our own lines anymore. Many topo maps have the blue UTM grids overlaid in 1,000 meter squares. And 1,000 meters is what, kids? Right, nobody knows. Oh, I mean, it's a kilometer. The grid squares are easy to use and great for estimating distance. There is also latitude and longitude information on the maps. And here, the longitude number is in black, but we no longer need that because we now have the UTM grids. Much easier to use. One of the benefits of using a map, whether or not you use a GPS with it, is that a map gives you a bigger picture of the area around you, the trails and intersections and routes available, and potentially more details about the terrain. Unlike the small screen of a GPS, you get a very broad look at everything at once, and the scale on a map doesn't change like it might on a GPS when you zoom the screen in or out. And of course, the GPS can break, batteries go dead, and satellites have been known to go off kilter and are even subject to the intentional degradation of accuracy. The GPS satellites are in constant motion, and that means they're constantly recalculating your position, so the accuracy changes from moment to moment. I've been using these excellent waterproof, tear-resistant National Geographic maps for my recent trip planning. The only real criticism I have of them is they tend to use oddball scales like 1 in 37,500ths or 1 in 75,000ths, which makes it hard to find a plotting tool that works. Fortunately, a company called maptools.com sells a complete set of 35 rulers for about $16, and these cover all of the National Geographic maps. They also sell individual rulers if you don't need the whole set. These are a little different from your military coordinate scales, but they work fine for both measuring distances and plotting coordinates. I'm not going to go too much into the nuts and bolts of the UTM system. I'll just say once you use it, you'll find it's easy, and for me, it's satisfying. It's all based on meters, measured easterly from a point called the Central Meridian, which is somewhere way over there, so I don't even have to know where it is. And in the northern hemisphere, it measures northerly from the equator. The system measures distances in tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of meters, which is not as cumbersome as it sounds. It'll make more sense when you have the map in front of you and you start using it. As you might have guessed, the UTM coordinates define a location. You read them right and up. That is, east or easting first, and north or northing secondly. In other words, the numbers get larger as you read them going to the right and larger going up. In the southern hemisphere, you read the coordinates the same way. Differences in the system are the cartographer's problem, not yours. Generally, your coordinate starts with 3 or 4 numbers. These are the blue numbers you'll find on the margins of the map corresponding to the grid lines. You'll be replacing the 3 zeros at the end with numbers you determine when measuring with your tool. The 3 zeros are not printed on all of the margin numbers, but consider them to be there. As far as accuracy goes, you want to be as precise as your tools allow, realizing that there are limitations and errors are built into the GPS, the maps, the compasses, and the plotting tools. So let's take a quick look at the GPS and how to set it up to use with a Topo map. I have a Garmin eTrex 22X, so your GPS may be different. In the setup menu, you'll find the position format, select it, and scroll down the menu until you find UTM UPS and select that. Below that, you'll see a list for map datum. First, you'll have to check with your map to see which datum it is using. While you're there, check the UTM zone as well. That will be on the coordinate your GPS gives you and should match your map. Most newer Topo maps in the continental US will use NAD 83. That's North American Datum 1983. But even today, some maps are still using NAD 1927. So it's important to select the correct datum, as there can be a considerable difference between them. If you are in another part of the world, select the appropriate datum for your area. You may have to visit your GPS manufacturer's website to download this information. To get back to the original settings, hit the reset button. It's important to be comfortable enough with your GPS that you feel confident in making changes in the setup menu, knowing you can restore the settings whenever you like. Now, if you check your coordinates, they should look something like this. That first number and letter tells you the zone the coordinates are in. To the right of that, you'll see two lines and numbers. These tell you which 1,000-meter grid square you are in and where you are within that square. The top line is your easting. Read it to the right on the map grid scale. Below that is the number for your northing. Read that going up. I plotted benchmark 8654 at 407,580 east and 4012620 north. So how do we find it on the map? Well, first we look up the first three numbers of the easting, 407. Remember, these are the blue numbers at the top or bottom margin of the map. These numbers correspond to a specific blue grid line. We follow that grid line to where it intersects with the grid line corresponding to the first numbers of the northing. In this case, 4012. Those are found on the side margins of the map. This takes us to the grid square that the benchmark is in. Using your plotter, measure approximately 580 meters east of grid line 407, and then approximately 620 meters north from the 4012 grid line. That gets us pretty close to the benchmark on the map. To plot a coordinate, you go through the same process using your scale or plotter. Like anything, the more you practice, the better you'll get. There are different ways of writing the coordinates. I write them the way they appear in my GPS, omitting the zone information. Learning in a classroom environment is fine, but you really need to get out and see how the map relates to the terrain around you to appreciate how it all works together. You can use your plotting tool and map to estimate distances and measure the size of terrain features. Their appearance in real life, as compared to the map, can be deceiving. One thing I've noticed is that landmarks on the map that you think you'll easily see are somehow not visible on the ground. This is where the GPS can really help out. Some GPSs can be set up to give a true north or a magnetic north bearing and the distance to a selected object, so you can use that to help choose and confirm landmarks. This can be a good way to calibrate a magnetic compass as well. Pick landmarks as far away from you as possible to reduce errors. Take a sight on the landmark with your compass and compare that to the bearing the GPS gives you. Note any differences for future reference. If possible, do this for the 4 cardinal compass points. Remember, when translating azimuth from map to compass, or compass to map, you have to take into account magnetic deviation. You can determine accuracy by checking your results against a known value. So you can plot identifiable locations, go to them, and see how close your map plot is to the actual GPS coordinate. Or you can plot map positions and compare those to a Google Map coordinate. Every time you click on the Google Map feature, you'll get a slightly different result since you won't be clicking on the exact same spot, but you can get pretty good accuracy and repeatability. The main thing is to develop your procedure as consistently and tightly as possible for accurate results. If your plots are frequently a few hundred meters in error or even a few thousand, you may have to work on it some more to figure out where the mistake is. There's a lot of information online, so if you aren't understanding something, you can find any number of sites and videos explaining it in different ways, one of which you can relate to, hopefully. As far as the GPS goes, I would recommend you get one far in advance of any major trips and take it with you as often as possible to learn its idiosyncrasies. Picking one up on your way to the trailhead is probably not a great idea if it can be avoided. With my GPS, I found it was easy to make errors saving waypoints and clearing information, and this would contaminate data from subsequent hikes. It wasn't saving the waypoints at all, and it was adding time and distances from the previous hike to the one I was doing. It doesn't help that the user manual is online only. This does not look like the Grand Canyon. I guess I should have learned how to use a GPS, a map, compass, and plotter. Maybe those UTM zones really are important. I'm going to have to check into that. After numerous outings, I figured out my mistakes, I think. If your life or safety is depending on your GPS, you want to be as expert with it as you can and be able to navigate without it. That's about all I can think of to mention, so have fun, be careful, practice, and thanks for watching.
Like and subscribe. I'm delicious. The Irish guy, right? No, it didn't sound at all like him.